Happy Thursday. We're cruising on with the second city, Athens. We spent yesterday talking about Sparta. When you think about Sparta, there's a couple things I want you to remember. Number one, farming was still what most people did. Two, very military, very strict, all about being brave and learning how to fight. And then three, it was ruled by an oligarchy, a rule by a few. Today we're going to take the opposite. That's Athens, and Athens is going to be run by a democracy. Let's get rolling. Another great Greek city-state was Athens. It was located northeast of Sparta, about a 2-day trip away. Athens was founded by the descendants of the Mycenaeans and differed from Sparta in its ideas about society and government. Okay, you got number one in your notes. Remember, Sparta came from the Dorians, Athens the Mycenaeans. Athenians received an education far different from that of the Spartans. Athens educated its males, as Sparta did. In Athenian schools, boys studied subjects such as arithmetic, geometry, drawing, music, and public speaking. You're cruising through number two in your notes. They also participated in sports. The Athenians believed that this type of education produced young people with strong minds and bodies. So Sparta, we want strong bodies. Sparta, don't really care too much about strong minds. Remember, sometimes they even looked against education in Sparta. At the age of 18, when boys finished school, they were expected to take an active role in public affairs. Athenian mothers educated their daughters at home. Girls were taught spinning, weaving, notes number 3, and other household duties. In some wealthy families, they learned to read, write, and play music. Women were expected to marry and care for their children. For the most part, women were not active in business or the government of Athens. The history of Athens was much like that of other Greek city-states. By the 600 BC, most Athenian farmers owed money to the nobles. Some farmers were forced to sell themselves into slavery to repay their debts. Athenians began to rebel. Farmers called for an end of all debts. They also asked that land be distributed to the poor. So, guys, you can see the system that's there. We would look at it and say, man, what a horrible system that you have to sell yourself into slavery. And I can see why they'd say, let's cancel the debts and give them some land. The challenge with that, guys, is if you were a rich person, if you owned people, you own the land, would you say, you know what, I'm going to cancel your debt and I'm going to give you some land? So that's the hardest thing of trying to pull that off. It might make sense in the long run, but human beings are naturally selfish, greedy people. So if I owned a lot of land and had a lot of people who were working for me for free, and they got themselves into that because of the system, I'd have a hard time saying, okay, I forgive all of you. Here, have some money, have my land, go ahead. So that's always a challenge. We'll see what Athens does. We'll hope we see what Athens does. Come on, page 5. Page 6. Page 3. Oh, that's never good. Okay, sorry about all that. Well, we'll just make that the extra credit of the day. On the top of the page, right, Mr. Bauer had to reload video, or book stopped working. Write something that says, you just witnessed this reload, and I'll give you some extra credit. Thanks for sticking through it. Sorry about that. Let's go on. To avoid an uprising, the nobles agreed to make some changes. They turned to a respected merchant named Solon for leadership. In 594, Solon ended the farmers' debt and freed those who were enslaved. He also opened the assembly and the law courts to all male citizens. The assembly was responsible for passing laws written by a council of 400 wealthy citizens. So you got number 5 in your notes, the guy who's going to start to make some of these changes. The common people praised Solon's reform. Still, many Athenians were unhappy. Number 1, wealthy people felt Solon had gone too far, while poor people thought he hadn't gone far enough. By the time Sloan left office, he had lost much of his support. So he starts to make these changes, and at the beginning it's like, hey, it's a change, we like it. And by the time he's done with office, they're like, yeah, you did too much, and the other half is saying you didn't do enough. Kind of the story of politicians today, right? Half the people say go farther, and half the people say you went too far. So like most people, even the ancient Greeks were never happy with the government. We'll see who's up next. Make sure you get number 6 in your notes too, as far as gone too far, not far enough. In 560 BC, a tyrant named Pisistratus took over the government. He was a relative of Solon. He made reforms that went even further than those that Solon had made. Pisistratus divided large estates among the farmers who had no land. He provided loans to help farmers buy equipment to work their farms. He gave citizenships to Athenians who did not own land. He also hired the poor to construct temples and other public works. Since religion was important to Athens, Pisistratus built additional shrines to different gods. He also encouraged the worship of the goddess Athena. Under Pisistratus, festivals held to honor Athena were expanded by addition of athletic contests. So you got the next one, guys, for number 7, honoring Athena there. So this guy says, hey, Solon, you canceled some debts, great, but you didn't give them any land. So you didn't take the next step where they could survive on their own. The wealthy are saying, you canceled debt, you caught me money. The poor are saying, I don't have any land. So this guy says, I'm going to chop up some of these estates and give them land. I'm going to give them loans so they can start a successful farming business. Once they have their own land and are making money, they can pay back those loans. So he took land away from the wealthy. He sided with the poor. The next thing he did, I thought that was smart, was he constructed temples. Why? Well, number 1, they're religious. But number 2, then the government pays the workers, and so you had a good way of taking a poor person and saying, I'll give you a job. Now, guys, anytime a government pays somebody to work, you got to understand the only way the government can pay them is by collecting taxes. So make sure you're always thinking in there, how much taxes can you collect, and when is it going to backfire because it's too much taxes. That's the fine line with that. Okay. Cruising on. After the death of Pisistratus, a noble named Clisthenes came to be the next leader of Athens. Prizing democracy, Clisthenes made the assembly the city-state's major governing body. As before, all male citizens could participate in the assembly and vote on laws. Assembly members could now discuss issues freely, hear legal cases, and appoint army officials. Number 8 in your notes. Clisthenes also created a new council of 500 other citizens. They were to help the assembly manage daily government affairs. The council introduced laws and controlled the treasury. So this council would suggest laws and then be the one in charge of collecting taxes. They also managed relations with other city-states. Should we go to war or not? Should we trade? Should we be allies? Each year, Athenian citizens held a lottery to choose the council members. So we took all the male citizens, you put your name in a hat, you pulled out 500 people that would then be in this little council here. Athenians preferred the lottery system over an election. In their view, an election might unfairly favor the rich, who were well known. Terms on the council were limited to just 1 year, and no one could serve on the council for more than 2 terms. Thus, every citizen had a chance to be a council member. So guys, you think about running for a president right now, most of us think the president is between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump because that's all we hear about, because those two political parties have all the money. There are a number of other people that are running for president that we'll never hear of. Why? They don't have enough money to get TV ads and posters and everything everywhere. And so the Athenians said, we're going to take care of that. It's going to be completely random. We're going to pick a name out of a hat. You get picked, you're on it. You're on it for 1 year. We'll put your name back in a hat. You get picked some other times. You're on it for 1 more year. But after you get picked twice, you're never in it again. So every citizen, you have the same exact opportunity to get picked. And because you can only do it twice, you then are out and other people have a chance, guys. So another thing to think about, as we look at ancient history and decide is it good or not, we kind of do that with our presidents, don't we? You can only be president twice, and then there's no voting you a 3rd term. But we don't do that with some of the other people in our government. I could be a senator for forever. I could be on the Supreme Court for forever. I could be a governor. You know, lots of places don't have term limits. And so it's a fine line of, do we think term limits are a good thing or not? They had term limits. While Clisthenes' reforms made the government of Athens more democratic, many residents were still excluded from the political process. People who were not citizens still could not participate in the government. This group included all Athenian women, all foreign-born men, and all enslaved people. Okay, so this is number 10 in your notes, guys. It's just a thing. We're talking about a democracy. What they're saying is, don't confuse the word democracy in Athens, what you think of when you hear the word democracy in America. In America, if you're an American citizen and you're 18, you can vote, is pretty much what it is. You know, it doesn't take all these things. In Athens, you had to hit some requirements. So women didn't get a right. You were born in a different city, you didn't get a right. You were enslaved, you didn't get that right. So it's not like what we were thinking of. Okay, guys, down here is the start of the Olympics. We'll talk about more of this in other lessons, but they give you a brief little overview of how the Olympics started. All right, that brings us to the end of lesson 2 between the Spartans and the Athens. We're eventually going to talk about the war between these two city-states as we continue to work through ancient Greece. Have a great day. Sorry for messing up the video there.